Good morning, June.
Good morning.
It's such a pleasure to have you on from all across the world.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So, June is one of my good friends, even though I've never met June in person. We've been friends for maybe about 3 years, I would estimate. And she is always this bright light and this bright smile on my screen. And she always has such stellar advice about career and about just staying on your path and how to find your way even when you have doubt. Even the most successful people, I think, have doubt at some time. And so today I'm hoping that what we get from June in just 30 minutes, and I think that's really a short time, is how do we find ourselves? How do we identify what we want out of a career? And then how do we shape the career that we dream of? And all the tricks that come with doing that so well. So, welcome, June, and we can't wait to hear all of your advice and your story.
Thank you.
So, June, let's start with a little introduction, and I'll let you tell us yourself most of that introduction.
Sure.
I know you're a British citizen, so you're a Brit, as you call yourself.
Yeah.
But you don't live in Britain. You actually live in Bulgaria.
Yes.
And you have a home that is spread out across the world because your husband is actually from South Africa.
Indeed. Yes.
Right. And you have one little girl.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
I've seen beautiful, beautiful pictures of you and your little girl. So I have questions coming up too about how you talk about career with a little one and with people of different ages. Can't wait to hear how your message changes and your approaches change.
Yeah. Well, my husband is from South Africa. I'm a British citizen. I'm also Irish. My father was Irish, so we have people there as well. We represent across many countries. So for myself, I studied at university. I went into different work. So I was, a purchase clerk, did recruitment, did sales,
You said your degree was business management.
yes. And it got to a point, going for different fields of work because business management is quite broad. So as economics, managing people, marketing, just a very, a breadth of business modules. So it lends itself to very many areas of work. I never really found the job that really suited me the most, but in a way I didn't really know that. So at the point where I went to change career, I had a very stressful job as an event coordinator. In some ways, it was just the best job ever. I couldn't want for more. But a personal situation where we lost something, unfortunately, my family to cancer quite quickly, and it made me feel a void. And this void, I didn't know what it was, what it meant, but you just know that something needs to change. The status quo of one's life, something has to give. And I do talk in my book about, well, why would I pick a change of career? Why programming? But to cut a long story short, I did choose programming. And for me, for different reasons, but mainly because I felt the challenges that it would offer me. And in speaking to people, at my day job, my boss, my colleagues, my clients, people who research, it was quite interesting to say what goal you want to maybe do change career and having such a varied response back. Because again, it's just different in terms of going against the grain of life of what you would normally do, especially at my age. At the time, I was 30. So yeah, I took the leap. I changed career. I took what ended up being a year from work, self-study, made a portfolio to show the skills that I needed to get the job.
Mm-hmm.
And then got my first job, and then shortly after had a child and moved to Bulgaria.
And what was that job that you got when you decided to move from events?
So the job I got was an analyst programmer. So it was programming using Java language. I studied to be a Java programmer. So that's the field that I went into. So yeah, it's a web-based app for a client
Right.
So yes,
And so you have gone on to actually create your own app,
yeah,
and you've done programming for yourself.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but then you moved from that
yeah.
into a whole different career. What took you into this version of you?
Well, the version of me now is we were talking before this went live, when you asked the question, what do you consider yourself to do? And by definition of the talk that we're doing today, which about having your career your way,
Mhm.
when I say what do, I do just that. I'm not just a programmer. I'm not just a career coach. I'm not just a career advice advocate. I'm not just an indie app developer. I do all these things. And actually, there's quite a connection in between these different fields. When you talk to people who want to change career, having a breadth of skills and understanding of different fields of work, you can actually really utilize my own skill set quite broadly in these different fields. So whether I'm coaching or making or just giving career advice, it lends quite broadly to that. And I think, for myself, when I say what do I do, I think having the mindset of, okay, I've seen for myself, I've changed career, and when I changed career, I found 5 building blocks really to do that, and I use those to be, publishable, to be an indie app developer, to then launch a charitable initiative to give free career advice on a global scale. Um, so I do, yeah, a broad spectrum of things.
Okay. Do you find that the advice that you give
Mhm.
changes depending on, because you said you do it on a global scale,
Yeah.
depending on the area in the world that you are dispensing your advice to?
Yes.
Do you find the advice changes?
Yes. Oh, yes. It
That's
does.
surprising to me.
Because it does, in a sense of, and this is why my style of career coaching is really, you have like obviously processes, but it's really tailored to the individual because everyone is different. And when we look back, well, when I look back at changing career over the last 20 years, the things that really I think about are like social norms, are about technology, about recruitment, say, also about opportunities that you might have for change. And all these areas actually are different depending on where you are in the world. Some things are universal. For example, if you want to fund a business, now you can crowdfund, on the internet. That is the same for anybody who has internet connection, who has an education of a certain level, who can use a computer, who can understand the terms and conditions and everything that you have to go through to get to the point of launching your own page on these websites. Um, so in that respect, some things are the same, but in others, I think you'll relate to this in a sense of with your journey with engineering and moving from the job you held for 15 years and going into teaching, that only once you've done it can you see that it was an option, like for real, and really believe it and own it. So when I talk to people, in different countries or in different, social classes, but education classes, and different stages of their life even, and obviously their age, you do talk a bit differently because you might pull through as a coach different examples. You might explain it a different way because how they might interpret or see it will be slightly different.
Right.
That's not saying you're not saying the same story, you're just adapting how you might say it. The underlying advice might be the same, but the way you might tell it might be different. And also, if you're telling somebody how to achieve a certain element of their goal, whether it's how to attain a skill, how to attain a resource, the way in which you might go about it may be different. It may be different if you're, living at home with your parents with no access to funds or no support, versus somebody who is, already, employed full time, who has a bit of residual income. It'd be different. And also the rules in education for different countries differ. So I know obviously in England, like I've got an example where for certain age groups, you have certain access to government support. So what I might be able to say, well, you know, you want to have options for this, this, and this, but help from government for education for your kids, either being subsidised, or having access to finances in different countries. You know, so it will change.
Okay. So what I was hearing below that is that you put yourself in your client's shoes
Yeah.
in order to understand their situation,
Yeah.
in order to understand their needs, in order to understand their limitations, in order to understand their life experiences, because you really have to come from what they know and what they live in order to tailor your advice to them.
Yeah, you do. There's also another reason why you do that.
Okay.
That is, you have to be sure that the person you're coaching, talking to, that they have a true sense of motivation. They have a true goal in mind. Because
Okay.
without that, even if you have the commitment to change, and that's the only thing that I need from my clients that I work with is commitment. That's not to say you can't have down days or you can't not be motivated. That's different. Commitment is saying I'm committed to starting and just going with it. But having a motivation that's not the right motivation, it's not a true motivation, because something, maybe subconsciously or consciously, you might be aware of it, you can never then achieve and feel fulfilled. So I use the analogy sometimes where you have, you know, a football pitch, and the football pitch is the path that you want to take for changing career. You have the people playing the sport, so you've got, you know, you're passing, you're defending, you've got strategy, and that's going on in the centre of the field. You have the goalpost. The goalpost is obviously the change of career that you want, or any goal, but that's your focus. If the goalposts keep moving, you're never going to be able, although you're still busy and you're committed, you're giving your all, and you're battling changes, you're growing, you're developing your skills and confidence, that ball can never get in that goal. So
Right.
really, as a coach, I want to see people reach that the goal, and that getting scoring a goal, reaching that desired end effect, you know, where I want to change career to be a chef. We've done that because that chef, you know, that really fitted your hopes, aspirations, and dreams. There's no underlying thing where actually it was society telling you you should be a chef because you live by the sea. Therefore, you know, our coast is renowned for being a restaurant hub for seafood. You just have to do that. Your father was a chef. Your father was a chef. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's conscious things that are put on somebody, and sometimes it's unconscious. So I think to understand somebody in the realms what you were talking about, how you understand, you know, where they've been, you put yourself in their shoes, it's also for the motivation to understand it's the true motivation in play.
Okay. So it's to understand by visualizing what that goal is that you want to get to.
Yeah.
It's also to understand by seeing what the subconscious or what the influences on them and on their lives have been, so that they might have social pressures and so on that are pushing them to do something, and making sure that that's aligned with what they want and it's not
Indeed.
for the wrong reasons.
You can talk to somebody and you can start the conversation and they'll tell you, you know, they literally wholeheartedly and honestly tell you their goals. But
Yeah.
then when you have talked for a couple of hours and then you say, you know, have you ever thought of doing this or doing this? And they're like, oh, do you know what? I haven't. And that actually, you know, fits me better. And
Okay.
that's one thing why I started the free global career advice for the, you know, career advice on a global scale, but for free.
And how
Was
do we get access to that before you tell us?
I just read globalcareeradvice.com. I have a Facebook page for it, and it's offer.com on the end.
So June will post that for us in the comments
Yeah,
after. That's
for
cool.
sure. But one of the key things of that was, you know, I'm a big believer in if you're living your life and doing your work for a passion over a paycheck, you know, that power radiates out not just for yourself, but for your children, your community, you know, and beyond. But in understanding what jobs there are, you actually are fitting people's desires, their aspirations, their skills, but also you're fitting their journey their way. But again, going back to that all-important question that I ask people, how did you get into it? Because when I tell people how I got into programming, if I think about, well, at the start of my journey telling people, oh, I want to be a programmer, I'm going to get into it this way, the response was mixed. Like, how can no one's going to hire you? Because how do you the norm, it is your computer science degree and then going in that way. But it doesn't mean you can't do it my way, and that's why I want to open up with the free global career advice, because career advice professionals have a really hard job. They do a brilliant job, but it's a very hard job, and especially in the last, I'd say, again, 15, 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
fields of work change just so quickly, and it's hard enough knowing what jobs there are in the sector, let alone knowing how people got into that job, because it's so varied.
Yeah.
And when you think of technology, how technology opens up different routes into work, whether you're thinking of how people get into it or how people do the work, remote working, gig community, the contracts, all these different elements. You have to see that the area of being a coach of careers and advising young people, even adults later on, what to do. More needs to be invested in this area. I think it does, and that's why I do what I do for free. I always want it to be free.
So there's a question that's in my mind, and it's based on the situation that we're going through in the world right now. I read somewhere some statistics saying about 40% of people around the world have been laid off in this time of COVID. How does your advice come into play for people who are out of a job and who, like me, because I actually lost, I was laid off, and that was really the start of me making that decision to pivot and to move out of an engineering job and to what I desired to do, which was get into education and eventually start lecturing as a university lecturer. So if somebody has lost their job, and that can be a real downer, it certainly, there's a lot of fear in there and a lot of pain, because there's judgment that we put on ourselves, and there's judgment that lots of other people heap on us. What would your advice be? If you've maybe worked with somebody like this, how can you use that to help people who are facing this situation right now?
I think now the comfort can be taken in the sense of, in our time today, we're living in a time where now more than ever, for people who really want to utilize their skills, as long as you accept yourself that you can actually take your skills and apply them elsewhere, or apply them in the same place if you have the opportunity to work remotely. Obviously, with the challenges of COVID, unfortunately, being mobile is unfortunately limited. So my advice to people at the moment would be, with having the acceptance of your skills, being able to be transferable. Now, in this day and age, we have so much opportunity online to build different businesses, to build connections, which some of the connections in policy don't actually have to do the finished product online. So whether you're making something and then you're just selling it online, or if you're doing a consultancy service, or there's different models of business. Obviously, you can do remotely, but using the internet still. This is the time to do it. If I was to do my journey of changing career, I did 8 years ago now, 9 years ago. Today, it would be so much. I wouldn't say easier, because it's still, obviously it's all relative. You still have the fears and the barriers and the confidence things and everything else. But the amount of resources available to you is massive, and the funding that goes into them more so is amazing. So me back in the day, I was learning programming, I would go to the library, I would buy books, I would borrow books from the library as well. I would have online resources, whereas now you have tailor-made courses online you can access for free, which are very well thought out, and which are, small, segmented. It gives you a small syllabus, but actually, this is the key thing: they're recognised. they're recognised in comments. The
Okay.
great work has been done in the last 10 years on this.
So where are what are some of the resources they can look to for free courses?
So, for example, you've got Udemy, and you've got Free Code Camp, you're looking at coding, and various different outlets, even just YouTube. The amount of breadth of videos that you have now is so different, and the quality.
Right.
It's not just the quality in the content, but it's
So
all good having.
can you just do a search on Google for like open courses and come up
Yeah,
with?
yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, when I started out, it was a programming course for Stanford University, and it's an awesome tutor, Meryl, and she was just amazing. But so yeah, Academic Earth is, I got the Stanford course from there. Just search. I mean,
Right, and we have Coursera, and there are so many others. So when we use the word open, we mean free, right?
yeah, best price. Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, for me, like again, going back to the programming route, I've recently, in the last, I'd say, 6 years, picked up a different language, programming language, C Sharp. I've made my apps in Unity game engine. That game engine you can download for free. Yes, there are licenses when you use it with a certain amount of, employees and clients. There's different brackets for different things, but a lot of these software as a service or back-end solutions that you can plug into low cost or free technology solutions. You just didn't have that then. As I said, it's not just the fact that you've got it, it's that these solutions and these offering options are accepted by commerce, they're accepted by the recruiters. So more and more people are saying, you self-taught, that's brilliant, come on, jump in.
So it doesn't so much matter anymore what the piece of paper says. It matters what you can do and the value you can add for your employer.
You see, that's tricky because again, it goes back to understanding your client.
Right.
I know we're talking to a lot of people at the moment, and people watch this back. So there's no one-fit-all answer for that. It depends on the person. Again, knowing what they want out of life and the skills that they've got and want to get, it may
Right.
be that you need certain things. So some industries are governed by, certifications, health and safety in England. That'll be an example. If you want to be South London taxi cab driver, you have to have a certain accreditation for
Right.
that.
If you want to be an engineer, you have to be certified and you have to be registered in some countries.
So really, it's not a one answer fits all, but that's why I think coaching is a really big thing at the moment, because you really understand your client, you can understand what they need, and I think again it goes back to commitment of are you committed to demonstrating your skills in a way that will help you get recruited.
Right. So I like that you say demonstrating skills or proving your value or your ability to do. That's what can get you in the door sometimes when you don't have the paper that's needed. Sometimes it can work. So what are some good ways for us to demonstrate our competence?
Well, the good thing about now, and again, trying to fit in what we've already talked about, which is your journey, your way, and what the last 20 years has really opened up for us, is if you know where you want to work, you can actually limit, who you might work for. So if I want to be a programmer, for example, as I did, I had that self-planning where I'm thinking, okay, what industry do I want? Games or business apps? You narrow it down. And I want to do more business apps. But even with that, you think, right, do I want to do banking or not banking? Do I want to do business to business apps, or do I want to do business to client apps? And there's different, you can segment it down further.
Right.
In doing so, you can further pinpoint, well, what should I demonstrate first? What should I demonstrate to get that recruiter who I want to say, you know what, I'll give you an interview.
Yeah.
So I was mentioning before about, yes, there's lots of training courses and the things you can do, but unless they're accepted by recruiters, unless you can show the skills, you'll hit a wall. And now in our time, we're at a time where there's value in doing your path your way. If you can show the skills and you can connect to the right people, and even connecting, obviously we've seen LinkedIn, many years ago it was created, but moving forward with Twitter, you can tweet the people that you want to work with. I've been doing this, or I've seen you've just launched this product. I like this feature about it. Engage with them. Often you'll find people, obviously, cliche, I've heard it from some sales book, unfortunately, but people buy from people. And if you're passionate, that skills, yes, you have to show the skills. When I applied for my job, I had a demo. I had a demo of a desktop application, a mobile application, and a web application, all written on Java, obviously in HTML, and also self-taught. So that was my backup. My backup was saying, look, this is me. This is my passion. This is what you're going to get. But this is my skills, and this is how I'm showing it and demonstrating it.
Right. So there are two things that I would like to do before we finish this interview. And I'm so reluctant to finish the interview, but two things. One is I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your book, because your book is a resource that people can go to even if they can't talk to you live. So that's one. Tell us about your book. And the second one is how have resumes and the application process changed from what we might be taught as the right way, because there's a traditional way, and depending on who I speak to, they still teach it.
Yeah.
That objective line that seems to be what everybody writes in there is the same thing sometimes when I read.
Yeah.
Is an objective line important? Does your picture show up on the resume? Because I see some people doing it more modern now. And some people say, no, you should never do that because you'll be discriminated against or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'd love to.
Yeah. Again, I would really need to talk to people in a country by country basis, but just tackling the second question first. So when I worked in recruitment, at the time, we did have a lot of people who would put their picture on, and people who actually weren't from England. They were from different European countries. They put their picture on, but British people wouldn't. So actually although people should not discriminate against from where you're from, but instantly looking at a CV, some people have the opportunity to do so. So I would be careful of putting a picture on. It's not needed. I don't think it's needed. Unless you're going to be a model, then obviously that might be needed for that reason. So yeah, I would do that. And also for myself, I often have a LinkedIn profile. That's a big thing. The connections on there is important, but having a presence. And I mentioned before about how you can go and see who you want to be your recruiter, go and talk to them, get involved. Yeah. They have an exhibition somewhere, go there. I went to an exhibition in 2012 just because I knew there was a Google stand there. I wanted to talk to people.
It takes real confidence to step up and represent yourself face to face.
You have to, but it's also about planting seeds. This is me. I'm delivering me. You're not just one piece of paper. This is my CV. You're a presence in your industry, and you're that presence by your portfolio. And the technology today means you can have a portfolio online for pretty much everything, whether it's just images, whether it's showing a live stream or a pre-recorded video. I'm a gardener. Today we're going to help our local school for free landscape their garden, the playground that they have. That's doable. You don't need to wait for TV to put that on. You just put that on there. Recruiters like to go and have a look. Who am I getting? What's the person behind skills?
So how do we manage our social media profiles and still be personal and human when we know somebody just might search our name and check out exactly who we are? Do I have to sanitize everything I do? Do I have to lock down my social media accounts and make them private? What do I do to protect myself, still be myself, and also allow them to see who I am?
Yeah, I think, again, my advice would be more limited for different people, but in a nutshell, most people...
So let's take Trinidad. Trinidad is in the Caribbean. It's developing nation. What would you say to somebody like one of my students, because right now we're talking about job readiness for my students about to graduate university.
Yeah, so to be job ready, I'd say definitely have your CV. Depending on what field you're working on, you can have your portfolio online, have your CV in a form online. You could show your passions, you can show examples of you undertaking work, whether it's you're helping family or friends, or you've gained some experience just by helping out. And that's the beauty of technology. You can, if you want to be a photographer, for example, you can offer to photograph new animals at an animal sanctuary, and you can, or animal shelter, sorry, so you can help them get more people coming in to adopt because people can see, these animals have been brought in, and that people might think I could do that. They've probably got somebody, or they wouldn't let me. Why would they let me? Own it. Own. I've got that skill. I'm going to go to them and see. Now, bearing in mind some of these examples, I would always say, some things you will need insurance for, or some people might not want to do that because they haven't got any insurance. But it just depends. It's case by case basis. I'll look at it. But there's always something you can do to have an online presence. I think having a professional side and a personal side is important, and keeping that distinction. But on saying that, my Twitter is Twitter. I just have one Twitter, because what I share, as I said, I do different things. I'm just making my way, and I'm proud to do all the things that I do.
Right.
So yes, unfortunately, that means if somebody wants to work with me just as a programmer, you're going to have to go through career advice stuff about language apps where I'm there. You're going to have to go through different things.
Yeah, it's with your daughter everywhere. We go
Yeah,
see your personal life, but that also gives you a feeling of the multidimensionality of the person you're going
it
to
does.
hire.
But also, it means people can search. Don't forget that. Too much isn't too much. People can search to refine what they're looking at as well. So don't forget that.
Right. So let me ask, in portraying who you are, sometimes people tend to leave out something like your line with hobbies or volunteer activities. Those count for something.
Oh yeah.
So could you explain a little bit about how a hobbies line could actually be the reason that you get a job?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, again, this is why I go for free global career advice. When I say work, we give career advice for work. My work is inclusive of hobbies, lifestyle choice, voluntary work, and paid work. So you can go on there and you can find about what it's like to be a photographer, to be a seamstress, to to move country. There's different things. There's lifestyle, as well, and hobbies. So I think having a hobby, it can be a gateway into your career, and doing something as a hobby or doing it as a paid job is you have the same level of skill. You don't half do something just because it's a hobby. You do it, wholeheartedly, and you do it to the best of your ability, and you develop your skills. So there is no segmented you in terms of I do this as a job and I do this as a hobby. I like to get in the community and help kids get exposed to programming. So I do a few lessons with Scratch, the simple engine for kids. You can make little stories and games. So that's a hobby. It's a hobby because I'm passionate about doing it, but it's kind of my job as well because I do programming, but it's a totally different thing. Again, it's about owning it, accepting it, and using that drive to get what you want.
Right. And I see some alignment too with things like corporate social responsibility,
Oh yeah,
because an organization might want to represent itself as caring for the community. And if you already do that sort of thing,
yeah.
it certainly shows that your values are aligned with the organization's values and you
Yeah,
become more
absolutely.
valuable to them.
Well, it's funny because in my book, I think it's
Good
like
time to
dedication.
talk about your book.
Well, the
What's the
dedication
name?
was about how, for me, I had the help of somebody who said, you know what, you can help me on my project. You're learning programming. You can do some of these easy bits. So I did, and I think when you're working for a passion and not a paycheck, whether it's doing it as a hobby, as a sideline business, or even not for an income, but if you're
Yeah.
doing it for passion, you have more time for others. You see the need. You see that what, I can go into that family and I can show them how they can make more of an income, or I can show them how they can then now, like we were joking before about honey, before this talk, you can show them how to do beekeeping. You can show them things. So I think having an open mind, giving back to the community is really a big thing, and it's a passion I have. I can help more kids and more people get exposed to programming. I can, so I do. I can help more people try and find work that fits them better. I can, so I do. Yes, I can do it better. I keep learning. I keep trying to push it. I keep trying to, make it grow. So yeah.
All right. So tell us the name of your book because we just talked about content in your book, but what's the name of your book and where can we find it?
It's a personal look at changing career, a toolkit to transform your future. And it's not telling you the ins and outs of how to be a programmer. It's not about that at all. It's actually broken into 5 key areas of building blocks for why I was able to do what I do now, why I was able to be a programmer. And these 5 areas I have used to then launch my initiative, Free Global Career-wise, to then do, even just to be out in the community, helping people learn programming, to be the app developer, and to launch, to publish the book. And it breaks it down into 5 key areas, but at the end of each of the areas is an action plan. And the action plan is to help really cement what that chapter is about and what it means for you to change career.
Right. So it's theory as well as worksheets that help us dig into ourselves and uncover what we do or should.
And at the back is actually an appendix where there's a chef, and the chef, there's an action plan filled out for the role of a chef, and somebody, their situation, their circumstances, and what these 5 key areas that I talk about, how it would actually help them, what they would come away with the action plans. And even if you don't want to change career, just to know about these 5 areas will help you with achieving anything.
Right. What are the 5 areas?
Oh, so some of them we've already talked about. The first area is about understanding where you are in society and technology and where you are as a person. I talk a lot about the grain of life, about what it means to go against the grain of life and what that means for your journey, changing your career, or obviously doing any role. Then it's about big thing we have talked a lot about is motivation, the true motivation that needs its own chapter because it just does. And what it means if you don't have it, and how what pitfalls there are, and how to overcome them. Then it's moving on to the foundations of change and celebrating the wins along the way. It's getting a steady path, but continuing on the path steadily and enjoying what you're part of it. So I think without a steady path, you can't acknowledge and have wins. And the wins that you have, like we talked about the calculator example, that's my win. If I didn't own that, what would have happened that day? It could have gone any which way, but I continued, and that's kind of an example with the wins. The next chapter, 4, is basically about sharpening your change toolkit, about being the best you can be, and about, you mentioned about social responsibility for your community, for companies as well. And it's about people power, not just you being the best you can be, but about people power. And then finally, it's about basically getting the most out of your journey. So whether you reach your end goal, because sometimes the best intentions and motivation, you may choose that your goal changes. And that's why my final thought and chapter of the book and the action plan is about, no matter where I am, and for yourself, with engineering, living coaching, you were able to use the skills, you were able to use that confidence, you were able to use that ownership to propel you into your next chapter of your life. And that's so important. And it's so important but overlooked often. And without that, we actually may be afraid to achieve more things, even to start to achieve more things. And that's a real shame, because sometimes not achieving, and I don't like to say success when I talk, although I do have it sometimes, but I mean success as you enter a journey and you enter it committed and you work hard and you keep at it. That's what I mean success. Success isn't I achieved it, binary, win or lose. Success, I got the job or didn't get the job. And the final chapter really focuses on that and what does that mean and how do you use that as a tool for the future.
Right. So we'll also put links to where you can check out June's book and where you can get some of the resources, because it's gold. I like this last, maybe to sum up, I like the last thing that you sort of touched on there, which is what is success. And for me, when is success? Is success something that we achieve when we graduate, when we get the raise, when we get married, when we get the relationship? Is that when it is? Because a lot of societal expectations really pin success to that, or to external validation. So, what do you see success as, and how can we find that kind of success?
That's a great question, because that almost is a thread through the whole of the book. Because without knowing the grain of life, without the motivation, without the clear path, without being the best you can be, without taking resources around you, people power, without understanding how you can move forward despite where this success lays, to me, success. It's funny because, again, it depends who you're talking to, but mostly it's about acceptance. It's accepting where you are now and what it means to you right now. Because, if I'm, say, making an app, and yes, my goal is to release this app, but I haven't yet done it, but am I not successful because I haven't released it? Well, no, you are, because you're working towards it. For yourself, you mentioned, I think with Candida, that, when you were working with clients who were, well, you work with past clients and now they're your superiors, they changed from engineering to being, the teaching, quality assurance. And it's having that acceptance. So back then, I would say you were successful. Some people, like you mentioned just when you were asking this question, well, society may have not thought you were successful, but you were.
Mm.
What do I think of success? Success is, it's about having an understanding of what it means to be accepting of where you are now and what you're working towards, what the future will hold, and what your commitment is to that future.
And who you are now, yeah. And who you are now, right? So
yes.
What you are and who you are and where you are.
Indeed.
So it's not looking at the destination as the judge, the ultimate judgment of success, but it's finding happiness in the now.
In the now, but like I was saying with the football pitch analogy, yes, you're going to enjoy the game. You can comment on the game, that pass, that foul, that strategy, you can comment on these things. So the goals are still important. You can't chase an empty goal, an empty goal, you just can't, or you can't chase it, you don't know where the end, is.
Yeah.
But you don't live then, you live in now.
And that's what we love in Trinidad. We do something called throwing pecan. Pecan is when we just throw words at each other for the fun of it, ribbing each other. That's living in the now in a football match or in a cricket match, right? I'm on the other side and I just love, pulling the leg off or teasing or making fun of the other side. And that's part of enjoying right now. All right, June, it has been such a wonderful opportunity I've really enjoyed this opportunity to talk to you and to pick your brain about shaping your career. This is the start for me of some work I'm doing with my students because they want to start getting ready for the job market. And so this would be a golden piece of information for them. And of course, now they know how to find June for some worldwide free career advice.
I'm very approachable. Feel free to send me a message.
Oh, that's so beautiful of you. Thank you so much. So June, before we end, is there any really big idea or important idea that I skipped asking you about that you want to share with us as your summary?
No, I think because we've covered, again, my ethos is just I talk about what I lived, and the 5 pillars of what I deem of the process of success in terms of how you can change career and how that impacts, what we pick, how we do it, and so on. We've talked about that. So I can't think of anything. But again, feel free, viewers can put questions and I'll come back and answer them. Not a problem.
Okay. So guys, if you all have any questions for June, feel free in the comments to post your questions. She is the most thorough person. Um, Usually, I ask so many questions before the interview of people that I talk to. I didn't have to ask anything. June sent me in advance whole mind maps. And that's
It's my role. I just,
yeah. So as thorough as it gets, and that is also a secret for how to get the job you want and build the career you want. Turn over every stone, create the picture for yourself so you know what you want to create in real life. June, have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
And we'll be talking more off camera.
Mhm.
Bye, everybody, and thanks
Bye,
for tuning in.
everybody.